Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Vibhuti Jha. I feel this week has been, and the last 3-4 weeks have been rather sensational from Indian perspective. And if I be very unabashed, I would say from the Hindu perspective. And I'm very proud about that because these are things that sometimes we have to rise to the occasion. And I'm referring to three very important events that have happened in the life of American Hindus, if I may say so. One of them is that New York State eventually, under constant conversation and persuasion from us, they saw the light and the truth that swastik is not a hate symbol. Is the hack and cruise is, swastik is not. So that Bill 2727, which was being attempted to be made as a law, has been scrapped. And that confirmation has come to us. So this is a great news from all of us, because for us Hindus, swastik is a symbol. I mean, to conjure up the image of swastik being a hate symbol, it violates your thinking altogether. Because as the Consul General had said, Indian Consul General from New York had said in one of the Zoom meetings that his home in Bihar has swastik as a symbol painted on the house. So how did we allow this to happen to us? How did we become awake now and not before? These are issues that we will talk about. But the second equally important thing was that we have seen a spate of, remarkably silly resolutions passed by many Minneapolis, Seattle, San Francisco municipal councils and condemning the violation of human rights in India, because CAA and Article 370 have restored the norms and civility in that part of the world. And we are trying to protect Hindus and minorities who are discriminated and punished in specifically three countries, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan. Even that became an international dispute that India is against Muslims. Think about the narrative. The narrative making on behalf of India has always been subject matter of dispute. The third matter is that Chicago, in that spirit itself, in Chicago, that resolution, a similar such resolution, was defeated with a very good voting of 28-16 in the Chicago Council. So hats off to all Indians who worked for it and got this done. Third one, equally important, there is a professor, Audrey Truschke in Rutgers, and she has been talking about pretty distorted history of India. I mean, to make Aurangzeb, who is the killer of butcher and virtually a destroyer of India and Hindus and temples, she became, I don't know where her research brings from, but she began to be a fan of Aurangzeb. And conversely, she began to berate Hindus as if we were third-class people. And that led to a revolt and opposition to her towards Rutgers University. And Rutgers University issued an apology. Although they upheld her right of freedom of speech, they did not apologize. Professor Truschke has not apologized. The point of the matter is, Rutgers did. And what I'm saying is, the pressure from us, the demand from us, the professor who is condemning us cannot tell the condemned how we should react. Come on, we are condemned, we have right to be upset, and we have a right to ask questions. So if you have a freedom of speech, so do we. So answer the question. I have just written an article which was published in creately.in, and I would urge all of you to read it and come to a conclusion, because that's I have asked questions. I have also said, don't threaten her. Don't threaten her, but go civil, but ask blunt, pointed, sharp questions. There's nothing wrong in asking questions, but don't threaten her. We are civilized people. By threatening to her, we fall into her trap of accusing us for what we are not. So that's a very important, tricky situation. Now, to discuss these matters and many more, we'll talk about American politics. I have great pleasure in welcoming Dr. Bhavani Srinivasan. She's an old hand in my programs. And, I'm using the old hand knowing fully well that you are not old at all, Bhavani, and you are a dear friend. And, so she's a very active social worker in addition to being a physician. And she finds time for doing everything that keeps her busy. And her level of energy and activity is just about enormous. Thank you very much for joining me today, Bhavani. And then I have a young man, Mohan Sonti. I have a doctor on one hand, and I have an engineer, an electronic engineer, computer engineer from the other side, and I am the dull banker. So there we are. We have a great combination. So I will shoot off with you, Bhavani. How did you feel? You have been part of this entire swastik thing. This brought a remarkable unity of purpose. And I will draw your attention to everybody. The recent movie that came, The Justice League, is a very powerful movie. If you haven't seen it, please do see it. Please see the extended version of that, because the storyline comes out very clearly. So there are 7 super power heroes, starting from Batman and varieties of them. I can't even remember everybody's name, but it does include Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman. These are all people with special powers.
Captain America.
Captain America is not you. That's the Marvel one. This is DC Comics. So these people are all joining hands to defeat the evil who wants to destroy the earth and all the antimatters and everything else, and wants to become the owner. 7, 8 superpower men and women are joining hands. Why? Because each one has its own unity of purpose, their own ambitions. But here, to defeat the dark enemy, that became the common goal. It is a fascinating story that how good gets easily diffused, bringing the good together is a much tougher job. It's a brilliant movie, and I took that lesson, that why unity is tough, because it's tough. Very simple. Evil has only one purpose: to destroy you. To give the example, Pakistan has one purpose: destroy us. We keep seeking friendship. We keep trying to find ways and means. They are not. That's what is important here. So your thoughts on the delightful news that has been around. It is 3-by-3 strike we have had. What do we need to do going forward? So the success, talk about that, your involvement, you were very actively involved, and also the fact that how do we take this matter forward?
Yes, as you rightly pointed out, we have been successful in this endeavor, but and I will attribute it to the fact of us all coming together, just as you rightly pointed out, various forces. Why is it so difficult for various forces to come together, no matter what, even if they have a common purpose? It's because I think, each group, had to be told about what was happening, and they had to be, said that unless we all work together, unless we show unity of purpose, unless we show solidarity, unless we show numbers, we are not going to be heard. Yes, we are very gentle, law-abiding, tax-paying, upstanding, upright citizens in various professional capacities. But unless we all come together and talk with one voice, this will not happen. And to that end, I'm very happy to say, group called KONA, which is our Hindus of North America organization. Then you also had HAF, which chimed in at different times, which is our Hindu American Foundation based in California. And right here, we had groups together which formed a community voice. And that's what they called themselves, and they joined together. And we had a number of meetings with our elected officials, assembly folks from New York State. And they did listen to us, and they did give us a hearing. And most notably, last night, in fact, we had a meeting which included the Lieutenant Governor of New York State, as well as Mr. Senator Todd Kaminsky, who actually authored this bill, the Swatantra hate bill, in New York State. So we got the actual people involved right there on the floor, and we were able to ask them, we were able to talk to them, and they heard us, and heard in a very big way all over, because they said that they have been having a literal outpouring of sentiment from the Hindu Indian community. People have been calling their offices, they've been writing, they've been emailing, and they've been sending messages across. So they realized that this was something that they had not realized how important it was to the community, how auspicious they considered it, how very fundamental to the very concept of Hinduism or Sanatana Dharma it was, and that's how we managed to get the bill revoked. But as you very rightly pointed out, Vibhuti, we should not rest on our laurels. We have to be very vigilant. I don't know whether anybody read Harry Potter here. I used to be a huge Harry Potter fan, I confess.
I have. I said to you once upon a time that I have literally grown up with my son. So
Yes, there you go.
whatever he was doing, I was reading because I wanted to know. He wanted to hear rap. I said, let me listen to what it is.
Yes. See, and as a pediatrician, I had to be on top of all this because
Right.
my little patients, when they come in, they like to talk about all this stuff. So when you're dealing with something like Voldemort,
Yes.
the constant vigilance,
Yes.
right? So this is
Absolutely.
what we have to do. And I also requested to, when the lieutenant governor was on there last night, I said, there are two things. I belong to a group called the Long Island Multi-Faith Forum. And as such, because knowledge and advocacy are key, we were invited into high schools, and we all different faiths, and we had tables set up in the gym. Every 5 minutes, a group of students would go from table to table, and each faith would expound to them, in a nutshell, what was the most salient features of their religion. And we did that. I'm proud to say that we did that. So this way, you're starting from young minds, so that they're getting the right concepts. They're not reading something in the newspaper, or they see something on TV, or they think that they ask their friends and they get some wrong information. They're getting the right information. And I said, the governor, this can be repeated all over New York State. We call this program Building Bridges. And I said, this can be done all over New York State. It can be replicated. In fact, we can do it through the whole country. All you have to do is have willing volunteers who have the right, and I reiterate this, the right information. A lot of Hindus don't know about Hinduism.
I will. I totally agree with you. You said something great. We were part of the conversation when Senator Liu and others had come in, and they confessed their ignorance. They
Yes,
did not
and
they did not know how
yes,
significant that symbol was for us.
yes. But
That
Senator
brings me
Liu,
to another, and this is needs a constant dialogue. And I have
yes,
been doing this since '91. Let me tell you this.
yes,
I've
yes,
seen the interfaith one when I came to this country in '91. As you rightly said, very few Hindus even know what Hinduism is all about. I can bet my life that many of us will not be able to say distinctively, clearly, what is Hinduism, what is Hindutva, what are being attacked about, why Hindutva
mm,
is evil. Hindutva is not like ISIS. We Hindus also go on defensive very easily because the offense comes from people who have created that scenario. And that's what is important to remember. They create the narrative for us. So, Mohan, I wanted to check with you a couple of things. One is that the narrative part, the Hindu narrative, I've shared this with all of you in the past, that the senator once told me that we love you Indians as immigrants to this country. You are hardworking, you are professionals, you have family values, you take care of your children, you are in the highest median income. You are least problem from a law and order perspective, apart from the occasional, tryst with destiny with white collar crimes or whatever. That said, you don't ask for anything. That's what they say.
mm,
So we are a respected community, but the good child who doesn't cry doesn't get milk. Like you have to remember that you have to assert. So that's why I coined the phrase And I'm very happy to share, and I have shared this in Jaipur dialogues in India and other places. Hindus need to awaken, arise, assert, and act. We saw these four A's play out in these three issues, especially when I was directly involved with this. And Nikunji in Kona is doing a great job for the young people to get involved. So share with us your thought now, going forward. We know the mistakes of the past. So all the intelligence, knowledge, information, how must we channel to create and bring about that awareness? And there is another issue that I will talk to you later, but first I want to hear about this part of the thing.
So, like you rightly said, I heard a similar phrase. It's called the squeaking joint gets more oil. So, so the one that makes the most noise tend to get the most attention.
Correct.
So in that sense, I'm not saying we should actually be making a lot of more noise, but what we should do is organize our Hindu community is number one. So we all are well connected, and we have to understand that we work unlike the Abrahamic systems. They work like a monolith. So they all go to the churches and mosques, and they have one single God and one single way of doing things, and everybody will follow it. So at the onset, it looks like they're very powerful because they are well organized and there's basically one single head. But said that, like many other monoliths in the past, any other monolithic ideologies, they all break down. Hinduism works more like a sand. So we are many little communities and we all have a common vision. So if we can inculcate the idea of we all can view the same way, so if we can inculcate the idea of Hinduism in the individuals, we don't have to tell them to fight on the same subjects and have the same ideas. But as long as we can inculcate the idea of being proud about being a Hindu, I think that will set the course for us. So that will be step number one. The step number two is going to be how we are going to make everybody else aware about our Hindu culture. So some organizations like HSS are actually putting in some effort in that direction, where we are creating some people like Dharma ambassadors, and also bringing awareness that some of us are going to be trained, and we can take those to the firemen, the police stations, the schools, and all the other places. And if we all can spend a little time to organize and make people aware, the thing is, in most Americans, it's not that people are bad. Majority, like any other community, are really sweet and nice. It's just that they are unaware of what we are. So if we can take a little time and train as many people as we can, our Hindu brothers and sisters, and if they all can take half an hour, go to these places, spend some time and explain to them about our cultural values. Some of these presentations actually come from HEF, Hindu Education Foundation, and I think HAF is also kind of involved, but it mostly comes from HEF, Hindu Education Foundation, which is kind of an HSS initiative. That is all that we need to do. If we can start with that, I think we're going to be a force to reckon with. And unlike the monolithic systems, ours work like a sand. We are going to be together. It'll be very strong, but we're very easy to change and adapt to situations and circumstances. So that's the beauty of our culture.
Where did you come across the analogy of sand?
It is my own. The way I understand Hinduism is basically we have, if you think about people, we are inherently introspecting, and it's about self-realization is our culture, right? It's part of our spiritual goals. So the way we function is we have innumerable little groups, organizations, and we all group together in little ways, and we all have a common vision. That is the reason Bharat is unrulable by outsiders. So I don't believe for a second that Mughals or anyone have ever ruled, because I haven't come across. I've traveled. My father is a central government employee. I've traveled many different places in Bharat, and most of the communities, they tell me that nobody ever came to my area. So I don't know if they collected taxes. I don't know what they did and however they want to portray it. The bottom line is nobody can rule Bharat because we are unrulable. We work in little communities and we all have common vision. That is how we work, which is exactly like sand, little crystals, and together we work and we mold according to circumstances, situations, and that is our Hindu culture.
That's
That's our
that's
resilience and
another.
our strength.
That's
That's our resilience and our strength.
That's right.
But
Go ahead. You wanted to say something.
yeah, but now, Mohan, I agree that we have certain culture and certain background, But now I'm finding that various other cultures, the Christians, for example, the Dvajastamba that we have in the temples, at the outside, where that is where you do your namaskar and everything. That is being copied in churches. The exact thing, instead of having the on top, they have a cross adorning it. So all these things are being copied. When we do Harati and all that, they're copying the Harati. In Tamil, there's a very important book, the Tirukural. I don't know whether anybody has ever heard of it, but it was a very important poem. You've heard of it, good. Which was composed, I think, in the 13th or 14th century. It was all in Tamil. They have completely taken it over, and one little girl was asked, so what is it? Oh, it's the Bible song which we are singing in our church, she said. So they
So,
are, yeah. How do you combat stuff like that? This mimicry.
right. So, I mean, I lived in Chennai for several years. Like I said, my father is a central government employee, so I lived in Chennai as well. So, right now they're trying, the fact that they are trying to steal from others is they can steal all the cultural and all the elements, but what are they going to do with their attitude? If they change their attitude, then Christianity collapses. And Christianity is actually collapsing for the simple reason that nobody actually believes in the Bible. There are very few people. In fact, in Europe, hardly anybody goes to churches. So, a lot of those things, I would say America is perhaps the most religious nation among the developed nations, the most religious nation. Europe has abandoned it. Most of the Europe, like for example, in Britain, I think about 10-15% go to church every week. So the reason is, no matter, this is the way I look at it, is this is a sign of desperation, because they know they cannot survive in any other way. In fact, today, one of the reasons they want to steal that and they're investing heavily in Bharat is because in America, it's very hard to find the priests and church fathers and others who can do all these ceremonies. So they want to recruit somebody from Bharat and who can do it online. So that's kind of one of the thrusts, and they're going to put a lot of money there. And very sad for them that all that money is going to go down the toilet, because eventually they're going to change back. They're doing it for the money momentarily.
This is a very interesting part of the information and this one, but I want to share with you
Yeah.
that when you talk about the decline of Christianity or decline of Christianity as a religion, you are also very observant in the fact that America remains the most religious country amongst the Christian world. But there's a very interesting reason for that. And I'm in conversation with some couple of learned men, because I'm saying that the reason why Hindus, Sanatan practices are attacked by the West and Islam is because we are scientific. We are a threat to their core existence.
You actually said it, Vibhutiji. The reason they attack,
They're
including the
afraid.
leftists,
They are
including the
afraid.
intellectual.
They are afraid of Hindu practices and Sanatan Dharma because Sanatan Dharma is based entirely on nature. And I had a very
So
fabulous conversation. And I say it's a fabulous conversation because it gave me a lot of satisfaction. I hadn't prepared for it. It happened in the moment, that after completing a certain set of consulting work that I was doing in a hardcore Bible belt, the CEO asked me, "Can I ask you a tough question about your faith?" I said, "Go ahead, make my day." I love Clint Eastwood's that statement, "Go ahead, make my day." So I said, how bad can it be? So he wants to know something. And he asked me, "Why do you worship so many gods?"
ah,
Classic. There
a
are
typical
certain very
question.
fundamental things that I ask. And I want viewers to pay attention to this. And if you like it, please share this YouTube. It will go on. It is right now live on YouTube as well. So what I'm trying to say to you is that I said that, but we don't worship too many gods. We have also one God, just as you have one God. But just as you have not seen God, I haven't seen God either. But you have a beautiful word that says, express your gratitude for what you have. Expressing gratitude is a big thing, big way. I like the way you guys always say, be grateful. That's nice. So we express our gratitude to God, whom you have not seen, I have not seen, for giving us life. keeping me alive, and creating life-sustaining forces to keep me alive, and everything that God created on this planet. Fair enough that everything is God created? Yeah, that's right. So I said, then let's say talk about the life-sustaining forces. And I said, I will not go into tens or twenties of them, but I'll pick only three. So I express my gratitude to God for giving me sun, whose energy sustains us. Every individual's life is sustained based on how energetic he or she is.
Yes.
But for sun, we would be in ice age, which means we are frozen and dead. So can I express my gratitude to sun as a manifestation of God, as a life-sustaining force that lives in us? Our behavior, conduct, and everything is known by the energy that we show, we express and use. And it has a form, doesn't it? Sun has a form. The rising sun to the setting sun, there is a form. So if I express gratitude to God by saying, thank you, God, for giving us sun, whose direction I look at, and I pay my obeisance, anything wrong in it? No, it makes sense. This was his exact tone. No, it makes a lot of sense. I said, now let's look at the second element, water. How wonderful we feel drinking water when we need it. 70% of our body is water, right? And water is everywhere. There's an ocean in the form of a river, the pond, in the glass. It assumes, the beautiful thing about water is that it assumes the shape of whatever it goes into. What's God's message here? That I am everywhere. I can be whatever you want. And it's in me too. So if I say God in a liquid form, anything wrong in it? How wonderful we feel when we are thirsty and have some water. Replenishment. Dehydration goes away. And third and final thing is air, without which we will not exist for a nanosecond. These are all scientific evidences. So we believe in this scientific evidence of life and life-sustaining forces, and air is everywhere. It has no form, no shape, no size. So we Hindus worship form, non-form, or any form for that matter, whatever inspires you to the degree. Buddha attained nirvana under a tree. Can I say tree is useless? Or somebody gets inspired by sitting next to the ocean, or the sound of the water flowing in the river, or somebody, just, these are the ways we describe ourselves. And eventually, whether you pray to Ganesh, Guruvayur, Ram, Krishna, or whoever, we go to the temple, all gods are in the same temple, and nobody gods gets angry if I don't pray to it. So if I offer my obvious respect to Ganesh, Venkateshwar doesn't come chasing me, you didn't pray for me, I'm going to kill you. So the gods have a mutual coexistence. That's who we are. The guy tells me, holy cow, I didn't know this was so deep, man. You should tell us more about it. And I said, that's where we fail. We fail because we do not forget about proselytization. But I think I must proselytize. I must let you know that according to your belief, Jesus is the only way. Do you really have freedom of religion? It's a vague concept. It's a political concept. You don't offer freedom of religion to me because you say Jesus is the only way. But I'm happy if you found heaven by praying to Jesus. But don't tell me I'm wrong about what I do. I don't tell you you are wrong. Why should you tell me I'm wrong? That's the conversation we need to have with, when you talked about engagement, we talked about conversation with people in the interfaith. We need people who can articulate the point of view the way they must understand.
Yes. Yeah.
Mohan?
It has to be at that level, yeah. But also we believe you have to have a receptive audience. If you have individuals who don't want to hear anything and who have some fixed ideology, then it's a little difficult to have a proper conversation. But
there is an answer to that. Bhavani, you raised a very, very valid point. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm happy to interrupt you here. The reason why I say this is that, yeah, there are people who will be receptive. The Abrahamic faith is not supposed to be receptive to our point of view. Therefore, we have to ask questions, politely and leave the inquiry and answer to them. So I have no problem. You pray to Jesus or whatever, or Allah is mighty, Allah is supreme. I have absolutely no problem. But don't tell me I'm wrong about mine. More people
So,
have died because of jihad and crusades than following us. Think, this is the kind of question we have to leave it to them to make them think that the guy made
so
sense.
one more point is
I also have one way of
Yeah,
putting the
let Mohan
Bhavani,
finish, then you come back on it.
yeah, there's one way that I also talk about, you know, the various, when they ask me about so many deities that we worship, so many deities, the way I handle it is somebody, actually a congressman asked me this. So I said, well, congressman, when I'm addressing you, I call you congressman because we are right here in a particular office. So he said yes. And I said, at home, your wife will call you Tom, you know? And he said, yes. And your kids call you dad. And he said, yes. I said, but you're one person, right? So suddenly he got it. That, you know, although we are say calling them by different names, our deities by different names, God is only one. There's only one God. So he
Absolutely.
said, now I got it, he said, you know.
That's right.
So I'm just saying, so it's different ways of approaching the identical issue. But, you know, I liked your explanation very much.
Thank you.
Really
And that's where I ended, that when we say that God lives in us, is through energy, through water, through air. We are manifestation of God as ourselves.
Absolutely.
So I tell them that supposing there is a fire in this building right now, and you are hurt, I am calling 911. Would you stop me from doing so because I'm not Christian? Would it matter whether I'm black, white, man, woman, or whatever? You will not. Whoever calls 911 is performing God's job of alerting the system to come and rescue you. So I gave them the example when, my wife Shobna had an accident. I was in India, my son was in India. When we came to know, I don't even know who called 911. All I remember, I asked her, what do you remember after the accident? He said, all I know is that the emergency, the
ambulance.
The ambulance came. That's all I remember after I had lost consciousness. I put a notice on that in that site that whoever called 911, please accept my deepest gratitude. Call me on this number. At least let me say hello to you. Nobody called. I don't know who it was, but somebody saved my wife's life, and I would never know who it was. That's what is important. Mohan, go ahead. You were saying something.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention two things. One is besides getting the receptive people, there are also key channels, key pathways to disseminating information, for example, at schools, at colleges, and then you have the people who serve the community, for example, the firemen and police. So those are the places if we can actually tap in and make people aware. Like in any other place, there are about 90% of the people will be receptive. They'll at least want to listen to the idea. How much they're going to work on it is a different story, but they will listen to it. And those are the places we need to tap into.
Yeah.
And regarding the multi-deity, I think I have a similar approach like Bhavani ji and Vibhuti ji, like what you had it. When I came across similar situation, I asked them, who are you? So they said, what do you mean? I said, why get confused? Just tell me who are you and whatever you understood. And they had, okay, I'm a dad, or I work at this place, I'm this. I said, if you can have so many facets, that is the whole idea of multi gods too. There can be one Brahmin, and then you can, but they all perform so many different things, different functions,
Right.
and you can go through any one of the functions, and all of them are valid.
Correct.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There are many ways, and that brings me to my favorite phrase, which I always tell people. We need to get engaged in the communities that we live. And, the art of asking simple questions, making inquiries like a child. I remember going to Disneyland in LA, and the thing that attracted me most was Disney's quote that if you want to see the world in a new way, look at it from the eyes of a child, right? That if you begin to ask those innocent questions, innocent inquiry, generally people take offense to being asked a question. How dare you ask me, right? But if you make an inquiry, It makes a difference. This is a funny one, guys. I mean, I'm happy I asked that question. So there was an investment banker, a Muslim investment banker, at the peak of 9/11 terrorism and all that. He asked me in a very sad way, why is Islam misunderstood so badly? I said, I understand your dilemma, but do you think Islam is misunderstood? It is understood exactly the way you are conveying it. Have you ever thought about it? It is understood the way you are conveying it. So let me ask you a very basic, simple question. All these people who caused 9/11, they all went in search of the 72 virgins. Do you believe in the concept of 72 virgins? That people commit suicide and blow up other people? Do you believe in that? He was silent for 10 seconds or 15 seconds. I said, now your silence gives me the answer. That's the reason why Islam is misunderstood. Never thought about it. So because when you lure people into believing in the unbelievable in the 21st century, that's what is a problem. And here is, Bhavani, you are a physician. We are all educated people. So, I can relate on the subject matter that coronavirus, this virus has been, as a friend of mine told me, God is taking over the world because we humans have screwed up the planet. We have screwed up the Mother Earth, and God is taking over because we can't run the planet. We can't run Earth. So what was coronavirus? It was completely non-discriminatory, which is Sanatan Dharma. So coronavirus was non-discriminatory, didn't discriminate between age, gender, rich, poor, countries, national boundaries. Whoever got it suffered. Yeah, but suffered. Some died. 500,000 people dying in America from a disease, a pandemic, in peacetime. Isn't it a baffling kind of a thought? And that's what I tell people. This is what real life is. Nature. Have we ever cursed God for a tsunami or an earthquake and people dying? Nobody. Nobody curses God. But religion does. And that's where I bring the subject matter, that we Hindus have transcended beyond religious rituals. We have rituals, no doubt about that. But just because you don't do rituals doesn't make you a bad guy. I use the example like, we all are, you pray 59 times a day or as many times a day. You blow up people, 10 die, 20 are injured. I don't pray, I don't go to the temple. But that day I'm taking my truck there, I save 5 people's life. So tell me, who is serving God at that point in time? Me, the guy who doesn't pray, or the guy who prays 59 times? These are the kind of conversation we need to have, staying engaged with the people. Now, time will run short eventually, but there are a couple of questions, a couple of thoughts that I have in this matter. And that is the education of ourselves. There was a wonderful management consultant from Chennai who was a Harvard guy, very successful. He addressed Bankers Club in 1983 in Bangalore when I was a very young officer at that time. And he opined and he said, Indians do not need to go to America, to Ivy League schools or other schools to study management. We need to study, he emphasized on the word, we need to study our own Mahabharata, Gita, Ramayana, because all life lessons are there. Things that we don't realize, but this, in a recent discussion, it came about that what is Mahabharata's biggest takeaway, Ramayana's biggest takeaway? For me, the takeaway was that the literature doesn't say that any character was a bad person. Think about it. Even Shakuni is a character. He's not a bad guy. It's a very important distinction, just like you said, that you are a father in the workplace, you are a manager in your workplace, father in the home, or a soldier in the battlefield, but you are the same guy. Likewise, Shakuni was a human being, but that was his character. Bhishma Pitama was a wise guy, but he was supporting the Kauravas. They all paid the price of their conduct and consequence. Their decisions had a consequence. So you can be whatever you want, but you always have to bear the consequences of your action. And second, for me, was appeasement never works. Ramayana and Mahabharata are stories that Pandavas asked for it. Give me 5 dhur of land. Even that Kauravas were not
Yes.
willing to.
Five villages or five missing, yeah.
So even appeasement never works. And when it comes to being, you have to take to war. Krishna and Ram had to fight for their valor, protecting dharma. So I'm a proponent of the thought process, Mohan, that in world has experienced democracy enough. It's time for democracy to come.
I agree.
Well, you know the old saying, Samadana Beda Dandam, you know.
Yes. Same in Tamil, same in Sanskrit, same in Hindi, same everywhere.
It comes from Ardhashastra by Chanakya.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, the sad part, Chanakya is not taught in India, but Adam Smith is taught because I studied. That's why I can tell you that.
Yeah. As a
Adam
matter of fact,
Smith.
my grandson's name is Chanakya, you know.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I mean that stagecraft Chanakya was absolutely superb at it, you know, and I think modern MBAs, many of them have been looking at his treatises,
Right.
Chanakya's treatises. They have been looking at it, yes.
The problem lies, Mohan, and that's where I want both of you to comment upon, is that how do we go take the next step? Attending interfaith is one part, but are we able to articulate our point of view? The one thing, I have attended a few interfaith meetings. Not everybody who represented Hindu way of thought was good enough.
so I would say instead of going for the interfaith, which is on a kind of a confrontational in the sense that we have Abrahamics who fundamentally believe that every other path is wrong. So I've come across some very deep-rooted Christians who will tell you that a person who is not a Christian cannot be good at all.
Right?
I'm like, how? And he said, it is bad in its own way. You just simply cannot be good. I said, if
Right.
no matter what you do, they're convinced. Instead of interfaith, we should be targeting groups that are a lot more pliable. Like I said, the schools and the other places, right? Where they're a lot more pliable, they're a lot more sensible, and they're ready to understand. The people who go to churches are already hardened. In fact, for example, in Islam, they say it 5 times a day that there is no other God but Allah. How is it going? It's like it is said that for Russians, when they wanted to torture people, it normally takes 6 months like brainwashing, right? It takes about 6 months to under an year to break the hardest possible the brain to believe certain things, right? And these people do it 5 times a day for their entire life. Do you really believe interfaith is going to work? They are they are not going to get it. So you're not going with this hardline who has already been brainwashed 5 times a day that this is the only truth, everybody else is evil. That is not going to be helpful. We should be targeting the more civil society who are strong enough to fall out of this kind of a brainwashing, like the schools, the colleges, the police, fire, and all the other places where they are more likely to not go to church and probably are not as brainwashed, and they will probably listen to you. So just target that instead of going for an interfaith and trying to change someone who is really hardened. Why go from that end? One example is Chanakya, right? When he went to the way he understood how Ashoka needs to win. I mean, his Ashoka's grandfather, right? So what he realized is his mom gave a lot of food, and he figured that the food is so hot.
Yeah.
He decided that the way he should eat, his mom taught him like just take the edges off. That is how you eat. So it is the
Go
same
from
thing.
there.
Why go with the core who are totally hardline and who are not going to listen to you and try to change them? Instead, go with the peripherals who are already not brainwashed, who have some common sense and who can actually think. And if you talk to them, they will probably listen to philosophy. If you go to church for an interfaith, they already know for a fact that their God is the only God and rest of them are evil. Rest of them are evil.
Yes.
Why go over there? I mean, what are you trying to change? You can spend another 10 years and you won't change a little bit on them. Instead, if you go to the places where people have fallen out of this kind of a hardline stance, right? The brainwashed places, who've fallen out of that place, out of churches, they probably started using their common sense. Start with that end, is what I think.
No,
My viewpoint is that, charity begins at home. There are a lot of Hindus who don't know Hinduism. We have to start teaching them, because only then they can be our dharma ambassadors. Like, if somebody sits next to somebody in an aircraft, just for example, you strike up a conversation. Okay, so are you a Christian? Are you saying so? Then sometimes, they don't even know about a religion called Hinduism. They said, in fact, I had this woman sitting next to me. She said, "You're a Hindu. What's that?" She said.
Mhm.
So she had never even heard the term before. So we come across people like that. So we have to be able to put it across in a friendly manner and in a way in which other people can understand it, especially if they're hearing of it from scratch. So we need to talk to our own people first, I think.
It's
Step
true.
up the teaching and step up the information and so on, so they can use it at the time. And we have to stay together. Cohesiveness,
Yep.
very important. Very, I think it matters. It matters in the short run, it matters in the long run. This is what we have to do, because
you
only
are
then.
you are absolutely right, Bhavani, and both of you have said very correct things. And you are right. Chanakya's thing of eat your food from the peripheral first before you go in the center, because things in the center are hottest. So why not adopt a strategy to you know to use the football language, attack from the flank. you know so the point which I'm trying to make also is that you very correctly said, and I believe in it, if we don't know ourselves, we can't defend ourselves. And I take the analogy that whether you are a vegetarian, vegan, or param bhakt of ahimsa, to use the phrase that you're ultimate believer in non-violence. But if your family is attacked, you have to rise to defend and protect your family. At that
Yes.
time, if you are not ready to fight, then you suffer annihilation, insult, humiliation, and all kind of suffering. Therefore, to be in the state of readiness, you have to commit to learning martial arts or using gun or sticks or whatever weapon is there to save your own life and the life of your near and dear ones. So this is the lesson I learned from Ramayana and Mahabharata. This is the lesson you see it in the aircraft when you fly. That was a management lesson I learned. Never paid attention to the security drills, right? But
Mhm.
one day, it struck me that when the air cabin pressure falls, the oxygen mask will drop from atop. First, put it on yourself before you help anybody else, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. That's the point which I'm trying to say here, is that if we are not in a state of readiness ourselves, why would anybody fight for us?
Correct.
Therefore, as to take your point, Bhavani, forward, is that we need to learn about ourselves. And it's very simple. It's not complicated. Read Panchatantra stories. That's it. Unity is the
Start young.
strength. Just
Start
start
young.
from there. Panchatantra story, they're brilliant, they're beautiful, simple stories. Remember the famous one in Hindi. We used to say that the hunter will come, he will spread the net, he will sow the seeds. Birds, please be careful, don't get into that trap, right? That's
Yes.
the way it is. That's what these people say. When something is too good to be true, it probably is.
Yes. Mhm.
So that's the point which I'm trying to say. Start reading Panchatantra stories. Start reading Ramayana and Mahabharata from the point of view of learning, not the story alone, not the incidents, but what was the character going on. And that struck me on as many times as I've read. It suddenly struck me, these three things struck me. That became my management lesson, my takeaways from Mahabharata, that at no time in Mahabharata or Ramayana has any character has been called a bad guy. It
Hmm.
is always his act, and each person bore the consequences of his act, right? The second, appeasement doesn't work. And to
Ah.
protect dharma, you will have to take up weapons. So you have to be in constant readiness for everything that happens in your life and face it. So tell me one more thing. If you were to, Mohan, I will begin here now with you. If you were to start one thing, where would you start off? You are a computer guy, you are working with Raytheon, and you are, defense guy, you must be having the highest of clearances. Where,
And
what does it mean when you feel that, yes, we will survive, we are sand, we will survive?
so the reason I think we will survive is because we have different kinds of strengths. We don't necessarily have one single ideology, right? For example, in Abrahamic faiths, like I said, they all look like a huge army, but they all cling to that one book and one idea. The day that idea falls apart, the entire thing shatters down. So that is the reason the whole West has been going through cycles. They come up with some sort of ideas and they are very powerful, and then finally the core breaks down and everything shatters. But for us, we have a million or a billion philosophies. We have as many, in fact, each individual probably has 10 different philosophies, 100 of them. So we are very, very adaptable. We change with time. So we will survive because no matter what is thrown at us, we will find a solution. We are not stuck to one thing. We are independent thinkers. So the way I see it is the entire Abrahamic faith is like it's a monochromatic system. You have left versus right, you are Democrat, Republican, you are theist, atheist, which is a civil variant of faithful and heathen, or Momin and Kafir. Everything is in the binaries. You also have communism, capital. Everything is in binaries. And the smarter ones talk about agnosticism or some grayscale. We Hindus look at it in colorful that cannot be expressed in grayscale. So are Hindus communists? Are Hindus capitalists? We have a little shades of those, but we are none of those. Are we atheists? Are we theists? We can have some shades of those, but we are none of those. So we are not leftist, we are not rightist. We don't have those either. But we can have shades of all of them because the black and white is just 1, 2 points, a couple of points, a grayscale, but we are actually colorful thinkers. That is why we will survive. We'll come up with solutions in directions that others can't even imagine. They can only think in grayscales. The new solution that they'll come up with will be in a new grayscale. If they don't like, say, a religion, they came up with communism, which declared religion is opium of the masses. And then came a challenge of capitalism. And then so everything works in binaries for them. That is the only linear thought process they can think. How long do you think a person who cannot think in multi dimensions is going to survive? What ideology is going to survive? So they might seem unsurmountable. So was Ravana. So was Duryodhana, right? If you look at the numbers, if you look at their power, you would think that nobody can defeat them. But that's not how things really work. Usually things go in favor of people who are flexible, who understand things in a more colorful way, because we come up with more innovative, we have a broader understanding of how things work. Sri Rama put together a coalition of everyone. The whole system came together to fight Ravana. That is how we form things. That is dharmic. That's
That's
why we survive.
beautifully said, and I totally agree with you. As the thing is that the time and motion, they all play a role. It may not happen during my lifetime, but I'm surely hopeful that it happens in your lifetime. Bhavani, to your thought process, you are a physician, and I'm a funny guy because I ask funny questions to people. So I have asked this question of people. That's the way I entertain myself and educate myself. That's the way I spread the message. So I ask people, which cancer is superior? Islamic cancer, Jesus cancer, or a Hindu cancer? I said, which cancer is superior? If your Allah cancer is superior, I would rather have that than my Hindu cancer. And I say
Say,
this,
which poison do you want to pick?
Yeah.
which poison do you want to pick?
Pick your
So
poison,
I
right?
always say this. I say this to the doctors are the biggest ambassadors of humanity. You know the reason why? Because in doctor's office, if you have an ailment, you go to treat that ailment. That ailment has no monopoly of any religion, whether it's migraine, whether it's pregnancy, whether it's a stomach upset, gastro, or any issue. For the doctor, your problem has nothing to do with your religion. You take a medication prescribed and you did something to get that. So what you did also was same as I did. So if I have a stomach upset, because if I'm a vegetarian, I ate 2 dozen parathas and I got my stomach upset. Somebody had 3 dozens of vada pav and he had a problem. And somebody took 2 kilos of chicken at one time and he had a problem. So the problem is similar. I'm saying that our lifestyle, our education, like banking, for example, does money have any color? You know, these are the ways we can bring education to the people to ask, make an inquiry. I don't ask questions, I make an inquiry. So I would say that is your migraine more mild than Hindu migraine? Can you pass it on to me? So I ask this kind of a conversation, they get totally shocked.
I think it's in the conversation, and one can start it at any point. For example, my son adopted a little puppy, you know, and I said, so what are you calling the puppy? He said, Bhishma. And I said, why Bhishma? He says, well, somebody will ask me, what is the meaning of this name? Then I can tell them a little bit about the Mahabharata, he said. So
very smart, very smart.
Yeah. So I think one can approach it in any number of different ways, but as I said, we have to shake off our apathy. A lot of Hindus are very apathetic. Somebody else will take care of it. Oh yeah, it's fine. You know, we have survived for centuries. You know, with this, you know, nothing is going to happen. This apathy, you have to get rid of.
No, that is, you are absolutely right. That's why I have often talked about that are Hindus facing an existential threat? We might live. We will live.
But how? What is the quality of life?
But
you don't just walk around with the thing on your thing where, like the jizya tax, you know, with the black band on your
just arm. As Pakistan and Bangladesh were created cutting off the mass of India, or Afghanistan occupied the entire Mahabharat territory, likewise, there is a plan to balkanize India. There is the way people are working is to not to make us disappear, but make us irrelevant.
Yes.
And that's the threat that we need.
Literally emasculate us, you know, emasculate us. So,
So if America can't handle 11 million illegal people, think about, we have 100 million Muslims, plus 100 million Muslims. That is a real thing. And that's the thing we have to address. I'm not saying those Muslims are not Indians. I'm saying that on a theological basis, we have to understand the nature of the beast.
So one point I want to add, Vibhutiji, is I would say I'm a little more on a more higher, the way I look at it is we are not as weak as many people believe. I think we have our strengths. I don't think we're going to become irrelevant. Quite the contrary, I would see that it took them 1,000 years and most of the civilizations collapsed within 50 years to a century at most. We survived 1,000-year onslaught, and going from 1920s to now, we have organized ourselves much better and we are a lot more powerful. I think we will not only survive, we will flourish, and it's going to become the beacon of hope for the whole world. We're going to be the Dharma Bhumi again. I don't see any other way.
Time is running up, Mohan and Bhavani. What I wanted to say here is very simple. Thank you very much for being with us today and sharing your thoughts. Remarkably important. I am of the same opinion. We will survive all of it. Our time has now come. That's the point which I'm saying, that are we ready? As I say to people in India, that India can benefit from the technology leap big time. But are we ready to take advantage or not? Or is our apathy, as Bhavani said, will let us sink? That's the point which I'm trying to say. Guys, great having you today. Wonderful conversation. I don't know if anybody of you enjoyed it or not, but I'm sure if I enjoyed it, you did too.
I definitely did.
Thank you for having me, Vibhuti. It was
Thank you. My pleasure. Have a great
Vibhuti and Bhavaniji. It was very nice talking to you as well.
Nice to meet you.
Have a great weekend, folks. See you next week, and have a wonderful week ahead, guys, and great weekend. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.